Have you recently applied for a job? Are you unsure about what a job interview entails? Have you been working one job for a while and you're a bit rusty on job interviews? If so, you need some tips for preparedness and success when it comes to job interviews. This informational video is going to go over some tips and tricks to help you prepare for and succeed at job interviews. The first tip for job interviews surrounds your appearance. You need to make a good first impression at an interview, and this starts with your appearance. Even before talking to you and meeting you, an employer will form an opinion of you based on your appearance for the interview. So you want to make sure that this opinion that is formed is a good one. There are some key ways to do that. First, you want to dress professionally in clothes that fit comfortably. So for men, you'll want to wear dress pants and a long sleeve shirt, preferably a button down shirt, and then consider wearing a tie and a jacket as well. For women, you'll wear either dress pants or a dress skirt, and then a professional blouse, and potentially a jacket as well. You could also wear a professional business dress. You need to make sure that your clothes are not only professional, but that you are comfortable in them as well. There is nothing worse than showing up to an interview in nice clothes, but not being able to move or even shake the employer's hand. The key is professional, but also comfortable. You also need to look clean and put together. You should not look like you have just rolled out of bed and thrown on some nice clothes. You should show up to your interview having showered, with clean hair and clean clothes. You should also have your hair pulled back away from your face. This is especially pertinent to individuals with longer hair. You want it pulled back as to not be a distraction to you or the interviewer. And finally, you should avoid wearing any cologne or perfume to an interview. This can often be very distracting for an interviewer, especially if it is overpowering. There are also some individuals out there, like myself, who are allergic to perfume and cologne. So, to be safe, because you don't know who will be interviewing you, don't wear any cologne or perfume during an interview. And so we can see here some pictures of individuals who are well dressed and ready to go for an interview. We have dress pants and dress skirts, we have blouses, we have shirts and ties, we have jackets. We have everything that one should wear when they are being conscious of their appearance for a job interview. And while the first impression starts with your appearance, it continues with how and when you arrive to the interview. You want to make sure that you know where the interview is taking place. You should map out the location and the travel time to get there. And you should also plan to arrive at least 10 minutes early to the interview. So, depending on how you get to the interview, you need to leave yourself enough time to still get there early. And speaking of ways of getting to an interview, you need to decide how you will get there. There are three common methods for getting to an interview: driving a car, taking a bus, or simply walking. And with each method, there are pros and cons that you must consider to decide which method of transportation is the best for you. So, we're going to talk first about the pros and cons of driving a car to get to an interview. So, the pros: you can go straight to the interview. The car keeps you protected from all the outside weather. And taking a car is typically the fastest method of getting to an interview. However, you have to consider the cons as well. You have to account for traffic in your travel time. There may be a lot of traffic and you may be stuck for a while. There are also parking concerns. Is there parking available? Is it street parking Or do you have to pay for a parking lot or a ramp? How far away is the parking from where the interview is taking place? And finally, if the interview is far away, you could run out of gas. So you have to be prepared to have enough gas to get you to the interview. The next method is taking the bus. The pros: you don't have to worry about gas or parking concerns, and the bus keeps you protected from outside weather. However, with the cons, the nearest bus stop may be a distance away from the interview. Perhaps the closest stop to your interview is still a half mile away. You will then need to walk for the rest of the way and account that into your travel time. Buses also have multiple stops, and they take a long time to get to all the stops. You also have to time it right to make sure that you get to the stop nearest to where the bus gets there. You also have to time it to make sure that you get to the stop near to when the bus gets there. And finally, bus lines sometimes run late. If the bus is scheduled to arrive at 9 a.m., something may go wrong and the bus may not arrive until 9:30, meaning that you are now going to be late to your interview. And finally, the last method to consider is walking. And so with the pros of walking, if you live close to the interview, walking is fast and efficient and it saves you money. There is also no parking or gas concerns when it comes to walking. You do have to consider the cons, however, and with walking, you are not protected from the outside weather. And you could also ruin your interview clothes by walking. You could get rained on if it's a rainy day, or you could make your clothes hot and sweaty, and it could stink if it's hot outside. And remember that one of the key things with appearance is that you need to look put together and clean. And if you show up, all wet or sweaty or disheveled from walking, you're not going to make that good of a first impression. There is no one right or wrong answer, though, when it comes to how to get to an interview. The best option is different for every person. You have to go through the pros and cons of each and decide which option is the best for you. And so when you arrive to your interview, you need to become prepared with the necessary materials. You should bring a notebook and a pen to take notes during the interview. While the interview is a time for an employer to learn more about you, it's also a time for you to learn more about the employer and the work environment. And you will want to take notes on this and write the answers to any questions of yours that are answered. You also should bring paper copies of your resume and references ready to provide. Some employers will have printed out your resume, but others will not. So it's just good practice to bring it with you and have it available for them to look over and reference during the interview. And finally, if you are applying for a job where your writing skills will be highlighted or are a deciding factor on whether or not you get the job, you should have paper copies of some of your writing samples ready to provide. Note, however, that you only need to do this if writing is relevant to the job. These three pictures show candidates who are prepared for an interview. They have their paper copies of their resumes with them. They have their references and, potentially their writing samples. And they have their notebook and their pens and the capacity to take notes if they need to during an interview. Once you arrive to an interview, the first thing that you should do is turn off your phone. If your phone rings or goes off during an interview, it is considered incredibly rude and you could be asked to leave right then and there. To secure a full interview, you need to be sure to silence your phone and focus your full attention on the interviewer and the task at hand. Other things that you should be conscious of and try to avoid doing during an interview include playing with your hair, picking at your nails, drumming your fingers on the desk or the table, chewing gum, and then also playing with or twiddling with your pen. These all are seen as distractions and can make you seem like you are bored or you would rather be elsewhere during an interview. You want to make sure you give your full attention to the interviewer and let them know that you are focusing and paying attention and that you are fully dedicated to what is happening. So each interview is different, and there's no way of knowing what exactly an interview is going to be like or look like before you actually get into it and you do it. But there are some common interview questions that are usually asked at most interviews and that you can prepare for beforehand. The first of these is, tell me about yourself. Now, here, they don't want to know information like, oh, I'm a Pisces. My favorite food is huevos rancheros. My favorite drink is tequila. They don't want to know information like that. They want to know information about who you are professionally. So, to answer this question, you'd say, like, oh, I'm a strong worker, I'm a good team player, I work well with others, but I also have the capacity to lead, and stuff like that. Other questions that they may ask include, what would you say would be your biggest strength and or your weakness? They may also ask you a question about a time when you had to use certain skills that are needed for this job. And so they'd word that, like, tell me about a time when, and then if you're going to be closely working with others, they may ask, tell me about a time when, you worked with a team and you had to resolve a difficult situation. And then finally, they may ask you some questions about your specific soft skills. And remember, soft skills include things like, teamwork, communicating with others, problem solving, and time management. Soft skills are those skills that are the interpersonal skills that aren't unique to any one job and are needed in all jobs that are out there. Thinking about how you would answer questions like this before the interview and preparing and taking the time to go over them, that can help you prepare for answering them for real in the interview when you have to answer them. In the interview, you also need to be conscious of your body language. Bad body language can send the wrong impression to an employer, whereas good body language can send a positive message. And so, the first don't of body language is you don't want to slouch or hunch over, but rather you want to sit up straight. You don't want to cross your arms, as that seems like you're uninterested and it comes off as uninviting. Rather, you do want to keep your arms in your lap or rather straight down at your sides. You don't want to avoid eye contact, but rather you do want to make eye contact. The key here, however, is to make eye contact naturally. Don't just stare at the interviewer the entire time during the interview, as that appears creepy and the employer may be turned off of you as a candidate and they may deny you based just on that. The last don't is you don't want to gesture wildly or all the time, but rather you want to gesture occasionally and appropriately. So, small gestures or talking with your hands, which I'm actually doing right now, but you can't see me. I talk with my hands quite a lot. So, you need to be conscious if you do that and make sure that they're appropriate and that you're not constantly moving as to be a distraction. And so then we see here this picture. We see from left to right the increasing levels of better body language. And so you see here on the left, you see she slouched over. She looks like, she'd rather be anywhere else. Here it's a bit better, but, still not great. Still slouched over, still looking bored. Here she's at least sitting back, looking like she cares a little bit more. And then finally, you have the best right here. She's sitting up straight, her legs are uncrossed, hands are in her lap, holding her resume, ready to go for that interview. Finally, After the interview has concluded, you should ask for the timeline of the decision, asking either when should I expect to be contacted or when will you be making a decision? Most employers will contact applicants whether they get the job or not. So, whether or not you get the job, you usually will be contacted. And so, the employer should give you a date or a day that you should be contacted by. And if that day comes and goes and you haven't heard anything from the employer, follow up with them and just kind of politely remind them that you're still here and you're still interested in the position. This will keep you fresh in the interviewer's mind and it will make sure that you are contacted regarding their decision. So that's the end of this video on preparing for a job interview. And so this video is intended to help you begin to prepare for a job interview, but it is not intended to replace all of your preparation. Preparing for interviews is one of the most important things we can do when we are looking for jobs. So, if you'd like more assistance or if you have any questions regarding preparing for interviews, please do not hesitate to reach out. You can call the Columbus Junction Public Library at 319 728 7972. You can email the library director, Mandy Grimm, at this email address. Or you can come in person during open business hours of the library and someone will gladly assist you. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope job interviews seem a little bit less unknown and a little bit less scary.